So, commenting on the Diamond Ship WQMP amendment. So, what are the Water Quality Management Plan rules, which are located at the New Jersey Administrative Code, Chapter 7, Part 15? And that's where all agency rules are located, where they go through an adoption process. And these were most recently adopted, or I should say, weakened under Governor Christie, and that did not bode well for what we're being confronted with today. So these are some of the areas that water quality management planning covers. This is the table of contents for the rule chapter. This is now importantly, these are responsive to federal Clean Water Act regulations. And since New Jersey has stricter regulations generally than federal Clean Water Act, they have a memorandum of understanding with the EPA that they can implement rules and enforce on their own. That's why in New Jersey it is administered by the DEP and not the Army Corps of Engineers. It's entirely local. But we have to make sure that we hit all the requirements of the federal law, and a lot of those are within water quality management plan rules. And these cover such things as wastewater management, TMDL, or the impaired list. New Jersey, it's the 303 list. Every state is required to list all their water bodies that are impaired and how they're going to come up with a program to improve the quality of that water. And that is what a TMDL is, a total maximum daily load for a certain pollutant, how they're going to reduce that. Water quality management planning rules are complicated. They don't always make sense, but for our purposes, it is through WQMP rules that sewer service areas are defined, extended, limited, revoked, whatever. And in this case, a sewer service area is being defined, and there are certain rules they have to follow. Now, when water quality management plan rules first were implemented in the state assigned water quality management plan authorities. And ideally, they wanted the counties to do that, that each municipality would have it be a chapter in the area-wide water quality management plan. Sussex County willingly took on that responsibility, and that's why we have a Sussex County water quality management plan. But some places, the county didn't want that responsibility, and then DEP took over. So we have a Northeast water quality management plan that DEP administers for Morris County and Bergen County and other places. So we're concerned with the Sussex County, where Sussex County government plays a large part. And unfortunately, they approved the proposed amendment to the water quality management to approve this sewer service area. So an amendment to a water quality management plan is not considered a permit. It's more complicated than that. It's a regulation, and it's an amendment to a regulation, really. And that's why notice of it is posted in the New Jersey Register and not the DEP bulletin. All permit applications and their milestones are in the bi-monthly publication of the DEP bulletin, which you can get online from DEP. But the register is where all rule proposals and rule adoptions occur. And so it's a little more complicated and a little more formal. So Diamond Ship proposed to amend the area-wide, a site-specific amendment to the area-wide water quality management plan. And So that was published in the Register. A public comment period was assigned to it. I believe it was for 2 weeks, but we, but you were successful in getting that extended, and a public hearing, non-adversarial public hearing scheduled, which is very important because that's the opportunity for the department to understand how much public opposition there is to this. Now, unfortunately, if you've read the public notice, there they met, for the most part, the letter of the law, and this will probably be approved. But there are some weak areas that along with your robust opposition, substantive comments, and a lot of people commenting and making some good, asking some good questions. It may be approved, it may not be approved, it may be conditionally approved, which would add a much longer delay to approval, and a lot of things can happen in that time. And again, this is just one aspect of approval that needs of municipal and state approval that has to occur. Now, because Sparta Township is in the Highlands region, and even though it has not conformed its planning area, it still has to have a consistency determination. DEP has to go to the Highlands Council for a consistency determination. And this is a requirement of Executive Order 114 of 2008. More on that in a moment. Now, within that consistency determination, the executive director of the Highlands Council, who is very, very good executive directors as far as we're concerned, made this observation or made this provision, which is highlighted. As of November 10th, 2022, the Highlands Council intends to include a summary of all applicable goals of the Highlands Regional Master Plan and subsequent WQMP amendment reviews. In other words, they're going back to something they used to do, which Chris Christie or the when Bob Martin, Chris Christie's director of the commissioner of the DEP, rolled back on, and that was because originally it was felt that the Highlands Council would give an analysis of the impacts to Highlands resources that would occur because of a WQMP if it was approved, or what was at risk. And with that information, DEP would make the final decision whether to approve or not, but they had this information, understanding what Highlands resources were at risk, and they could, if they felt it was egregious, either approve with conditions or disapprove. But under Chris Christie, that was taken away. A non-conforming municipality was not, it was only looked upon, the regional master plan provision for net water availability was the only provision of the regional master plan that was looked at for consistency and what the Highlands Council is telling us now is that they're going back to the old way of a comprehensive analysis and consistency determination, but this project is being grandfathered. But I argue that the Highlands Regional Master Plan is a very, very good planning device. It is the gold standard because it is ultimately sustainable. It is based on the capacity of ecological resources to maintain human development over time. And it's really the best in the state. So you could make an argument that aside from your local zoning ordinances, you you aspire to the best planning for your community that you live. And you have every right to do that. It's not regulatory, but you can make a great case why it is far superior. Why not go by the standard of the best planning? But even aside from that, we do find some weaknesses. So every municipality who seeks, or every project that seeks a WQMP, is subject to the net water availability provisions of the regional master plan. And that is according to Executive Order 114/2008. In addition, Executive Order 114 requires that the Highlands Council review and provide comments on WQMP amendments regarding consistency. Well, he said that already. Now, what does Executive Order 114 say? This was adopted in 2008 at the same time that the regional master plan was adopted. And this was to create a better coordination between DEP, between the State Planning Commission, COA, and the DCA. And one of the provisions of this executive order was that the DEP shall take appropriate action to ensure that no approval is given to any portion of a water quality management plan amendment, which is what Diamond Chip is seeking, in the protection zone, which Diamond Chip is, I'll show that in a moment, the conservation zone, or the environmentally constrained subzones, as delineated in the Highlands Plan within a HUC 14 subwatershed, which is an area of land that drains to a common water body, HUC 14 subwatershed, that is in or anticipated to be in a deficit of net water availability as identified by the Highlands Plan. And I'll show that this HUC 14 that Diamond Chip is located is within a deficit HUC 14 as identified by the Highlands Council. Unless the approval is conditioned on a municipal water use and conservation management plan consistent with the policies in the Highlands Plan, having been approved by the Highlands Council and having been fully implemented. There is some weakness in their following the strict language of this provision, and I'll get more into that. Now, this is a map of the Highlands land use capability zones, and the green is the protection zone. You can see where Diamond Chip is located, outlined. The parcel is outlined in yellow. That is in the protection zone. So it qualifies for one of the stipulations of Executive Order 114. I want to pull back a second and discuss the preservation in the planning area, because when I talk about the land use capability zones, people get confused and mix in the planning and preservation area. The planning and preservation area are not zones. Think of zones as zoning zones, as you would in a municipality where you have agriculture, where you might have high density residential or rural residential. Those are the land use capability zones. The preservation and planning area are the two areas of the Highlands that the goals and objectives of the Highlands Act would be reached, would be realized, but through different methods. In the preservation area, which is really almost one, as if someone drew a line around a huge forest. It is mostly forested, and it is the inner one half of the Highlands. And you can look at the planning area which surrounds it as a buffer zone, but it's still part of the Highlands. And that's whereas in the preservation area, the goals and objectives of the Highlands Act will be met by strict regulations by DEP, land use regulations. In the planning area, those objectives will be met by voluntary conformance to a regional master plan drafted and adopted by the Highlands Council. So in the planning area, conformance is voluntary, and Sparta has chosen not to conform. So I just wanted to point that out, back to EO 114 and how it applies to this amendment. This is a map of HUC 14s and their availability of water. The orange is really, there are 3 tiers of deficit and there are 3 tiers of surplus. If it's a yellow or an orange color or red, it's a deficit. And this deficit surrounding Diamond Ship is a midpoint. If you look at the legend, it's between 100,000 and 999,000 gallons of water each day, which is being drawn out of the HUC 14 and not being returned. If you look to the left, Lafayette and part of Andover Township are in a little lesser deficit. And if you look to the north, you see a little sliver of part of Lafayette Township, which actually is in a surplus. So since Sparta Township is in the protection, or the parcel is in the protection zone, and it is in a deficit, there are certain conditions which must be met before DEP can approve this amendment. And they have not met that yet. In the regional master plan in chapter 5, now, sorry, but I'm going to be reading a little bit here. The regional master plan states in chapter 5, quote, the implementation of water use efficiency, that a firm or bonded commitment for implementation of the selected methods or components of the water use and conservation management plan shall be required prior to approval of additional consumptive and depletive uses where a current deficit exists. No such guarantee has been placed on a condition of the Highlands Council approval of this amendment. In fact, no schedule for compliance or manner to ensure compliance is set forth. Only vaguely outlined conservation measures are stipulated with no set dates for implementation, or that the applicant is even required to follow up with the Highlands Council, nor is any penalty for non-compliance stipulated. In fact, we have an IOPRID for a water use and conservation management plan about a month ago, and we don't have one yet. So DEP cannot approve this amendment until that is completed. And not only completed, not only signed, not only agreed upon, according to the language of the executive order, it has to be fully implemented. We're not sure, nobody knows what that means, but it means more than just agreeing to do one. The RMP further stipulates in its Highlands project review and project review standards that for WQMP reviews, they're discussing WQMP reviews by the Highlands Council. The proposed sewer service area must be consistent with the resource protection and smart growth standards of the regional master plan, and that the WQMP amendment must provide information about water supply needs within public water supply service areas and areas served by domestic wells. Here, as part of the RMP standards for its approval of a WQMP review, the Highlands Council is directed to provide a consistency determination for the proposed sewer service area against all the resource protection and smart growth standards as incorporated in the regional master plan. We see no checklist of regional master plan provisions that the proposed development is held to, nor is there the required analysis of current water use. This should be everybody's comment. The proposed sewer service area should be denied. until it can be approved in a manner consistent with the regional master plan and executive order 114. This proposed amendment, has not met that standard. The Highlands Council has not held the project to the standard, and nor has DEP. This is a map of carbonate rock areas of the Highlands, limestone. And carbonate rock is a soluble rock, dissolves in acidic water. It can form sinkholes. They happen to overlie very productive aquifers because water travels very fast in carbonate rock areas, because it from the surface to the underlying aquifer, or out again, because you could have disappearing streams in a carbonate rock area. Those under surface comes back out again. It's very unpredictable, and surface water, clean water, hopefully travels very quickly. Precipitation travels very quickly to replenish the aquifer, but also does stormwater and contamination that's spilled on the landscape. Have to be very careful in areas of carbonate rock. Carbonate rock is a sign of a very productive aquifer, but it has the other side of it, that it has much less attenuation of pollution by the time water percolating down or infiltrating reaches the aquifer. And these are also the prime groundwater recharge areas that the Highlands Council maps. So these are the most productive areas of recharge in a sub-watershed, water traveling, best places for infiltration. And Diamond Chip is going to be one big roof rather than infiltrating water. Also, it's hard to see the outline of the Diamond Ship property here, but you can see the underlying sand and gravel operation. These are wellhead protection areas. So not only is there a very important aquifer underneath this proposed warehouse, there are community wells that serve, we don't know just by looking at this how many, but these are public community wellheads that draw water from certain groundwater from certain locations. And these are the 3 tiers of protection. And the center one, which is almost perfectly around the center of Diamond Chip, is a 2-year time of travel. That means something that's dropped on the surface, liquid, gets to the groundwater, into that well within 1 year, which within 2 years, which is considered very quick. So in the consistency determination in a carbonate rock area, it has been my experience, and I've been doing this for many years, that the Highlands Council always requires, as a condition of approval, a geotechnical investigation if it's a carbonate rock area, to see what condition of the limestone is subsurface, whether there are sinkholes forming, whether this is, some carbonate rock or limestone is more resistant than others to sinkholes. This is the Lythville formation, which is fairly susceptible to sinkholes. I don't understand why the Highlands Council has not required a geotechnical investigation. And if this was an area that is subject to sinkhole formation, their stormwater plan, their detention and retention basins are lined underneath, because that stormwater cannot infiltrate because it will pollute the groundwater. So it gets lost by evaporation. So they have to be much larger to prevent flooding. And they're going to need a detention basin, and they can't use green infrastructure because the water can't go back into the ground if it's very soluble limestone. So it would be very, very challenging for a stormwater plan for a warehouse such as this. And I haven't seen a stormwater plan, but a comment I will be making is that a phase one geotechnical investigation must be done for understanding the underlying geology and the susceptibility to not only sinkholes, but channels where water can readily, quickly mix with groundwater. No one really knows the volume of water in this aquifer, but we know if we keep pumping more than we're returning, eventually we can deplete it entirely. Whether that takes place in 10 years, 60 years, 500 years, we don't know, but we just can't keep our fingers crossed. And we certainly can't pollute it, because once you do that, there's very little you can do to get it back. And if you do, it's very expensive. And there are also some contaminated sites within this parcel that you could see in the Highlands Council interactive map. There's no mention of what has been done to remediate those sites. Are they remediated? Are they encapsulated? Are they a work in progress? We don't know. That should be discussed as well. So now that I've confused all of you, welcome. Hopefully I can allay that confusion by answering some precise questions.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions from our folks. I don't see anything in the chat, but I wonder if we have some folks raise their hand. If I can, do I have the capability to let someone in? Well, I mean, Anand's raising his hand, but he could actually speak. He doesn't.
No, it's okay. Well, I thought Mark Scott had his hand raised earlier.
I know Mark Scott was the first one to have his hand raised. I have it on my list. How do can I allow him to talk?
I think I have to do it. So.
Yep, I did it.
Oh,
Mark,
you did it. Very good.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hey, Margie.
Hi, Barb.
Hey.
Hello. I do have a question because there are mounds and mounds of dirt, seeing how I am on that property every day right next door to it. And there are mounds that they have taken up from the ready mix site that they've gone through, extracted the limestone or whatever, and they've just left them there. And they're all over the property. So if they were going to put those mounds of dirt back in the ground where they've taken out all the limestone, God only knows what's in there.
I don't know what the requirements are. They may be asked to take it off site and dispose of it. I'm sure if it's contaminated, they wouldn't be able to keep it there. But I just don't know the answer to that one.
And it's been there for years. Also, I was thought, is there
in the prior planning board said they had to remove it.
They had to remove it, but it has not been removed. Is there some kind of a requirement that's called IRIS? Something that a test that needs to be done. I was speaking with someone that used to work in concrete, and every time there's a change of hands of a property that has this type of materials on it, there's a report that needs to be done. Is it IRIS, ICE?
Yeah, I'm not that familiar, but it sounds, I've heard of it. I've heard it discussed. I mean, it's a whole different section of DEP that monitors surface mining, crushed stone, gravel places, and they have their own sets of regulations and requirements. I'm not that familiar with that aspect, but
Okay.
it if they're supposed to have been, I mean, this happens a lot. They promise the world to get approved, and no one ever follows through. The municipality never asked for it, and they never deliver it, and suddenly it's 10 years later, and they've never done their annual report on blah blah blah, which they were supposed to do. So that's something you can check on.
Okay. Now, what was odd when you're saying that there was a depletion of water, because I had spoken directly with our previous water utility manager at town hall, and he said there is absolutely no depletion of water in that entire area.
Yeah, but he's one of Hertzberg's guys.
But he's now retired and he's lives right near there, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I mean, he looked me straight in the face and said, no, there is no depletion.
Well,
how can that be?
Both the Highlands Council and DEP's method of determining deficit or surplus are not perfect. They're based on models. We really don't know the volume of water that's in that aquifer, but DEP has a much more conservative measure, and within a specific land area, the size of a Hub 14, which is, I don't know, half the size, a quarter of the size, a fifth the size of Sparta, that overlays the aquifer, they can pretty accurately tell if there's more water that's being drawn out on a regular basis than is being returned. How that impacts the entire aquifer, we don't know, but it's based on very conservative inputs, because the Highlands Act told the Highlands Council to be very conservative about protecting our water resources. So who's right? I can't tell you, but the Highlands Council is more precision and it is more conservative when it comes to protecting water supplies.
So actually, I think, Elliot, the question about where you had mentioned that Sparta is not conforming, can you just explain that a little bit to the group so they understand what that means?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, the Highlands Council adopted a Highlands Regional Master Plan in 2008. It is innovative. It is almost revolutionary. It's been studied all over the world. It is really, I would argue that if you really care about the character of your community and you want to maintain it, it's the best mechanism for doing that, because a developer can't come in and do things under the table because there's too much visibility. The Highlands, the Regional Master Plan really maintains the natural resource and historical resource character of the town, of the municipality. And any municipality that conforms, their master plan now has the authority of the state. And a developer who gets denied turns around and sues the municipality. They have a much higher bar because of the state consistency with state regulations or state guidelines. Now your master plan and zoning ordinances have the presumption of validity, which you don't have on your own as a municipality. You can be shown to be arbitrary and capricious, and you lose. And the Highlands Council will pay the legal costs of defending your master plan if a developer was dumb enough to want to sue you, because they'd be suing the state. Now, to conform, you would make your zoning ordinances and master plan consistent with the applicable guidelines of the regional master plan. and anyone can look at it. It's online. And it is really very, very good planning. I don't see why anyone would not want their municipality to conform to it. But there is a controversy about it. Some people look at things differently because planning area conformance is voluntary, meaning it's voluntary whether or not a municipality aligns their laws with the regional master plan. But what about the state when it comes to its permitting? Should it look at the higher guidelines of the regional master plan for a non-conforming state? Some people say yes, they should, because that's not conformance, that's something else. And that's a push-pull tension that's gone on for a while. That's why the current Highlands Council is now going to look at all provisions of the regional master plan for a WQMP amendment, regardless of the conforming status.
Oops,
So
hang on, let me just mute you, Margie, because you still had the floor. I didn't mean to with that, but I do have some questions coming in fast and furious from the chat, and some of them are kind of quick. So is carbonate limestone the same as karst?
Karst is when limestone dissolves, it can have that's a karst feature. A sinkhole is a karst feature. An underground stream is a karst feature. Not all limestone has karst features. That's what karst is. Karst is these things that occur when the carbonate rock dissolves. But it doesn't always dissolve because there's no water or going through it or acidic things. So that will not have karst features.
Okay. There's a lot here. So if you guys want to ask your questions yourselves, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. But in the meantime, I will try to do this. So there's a lot of comments actually. So I'm not sure the comments, I'm not sure if we all see the comments that everybody, when you write a comment, if it's going to the entire group or just me. So let's see, might the applicant use ready mix use allowance to say this new application is less intense, and might the New Jersey DEP consider that?
Well, according to the consistency determination, they're going to be using less water than the warehouse will use less water than they are now. That's why they're not making them mitigate for their water use.
Okay, here's another one. It's kind of a good follow-up. So can we, SRD, Sparta Township, the DEP, Highlands, etc., do we have the right or ability to protect our municipal drinking water for 70% of our township to post a huge bond or insurance policy as a tool to protect our water?
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier that according to this water use and conservation management plan, which is the developer and the municipality together have to do for the entire HUC 14, according to the RMP, there is supposed to be a bond to ensure that it is fully implemented. And there are guarantees that have to occur. There are milestones that need to be reached. And if they're not, they're in violation. So I don't know if there's a legal remedy just to say, if you pollute our water, there's a $5 million bond that comes to us. But in a way, if they do what they're supposed to do, and right now it doesn't look like it's being enforced, there will be a performance bond and guarantee that this mitigation for their water use in a deficit HUC 14 is is being fully implemented. I hope that
Okay,
answers
so
your
that
question.
was the follow-up to the question, kind of like a performance bond or a tactic to prevent them from going forward. Can we as citizens demand a complete water study by the neutral party or by a neutral party, like somebody out of state, to be paid for by the applicant?
What kind of water study? I mean, all they can really
On
do,
the aquifer,
all they
I'm
can, I
assuming.
mean, there have been comprehensive modeling, but there's no way to really determine the volume of water. They can figure out how much water per hour will come out of it, but they don't know when it's going to go empty. So,
Okay. I'm sorry, Elliot, go ahead.
and you know, if they do something that is their responsibility that results in the contamination, they'll get fined up the wazoo. But if they run out of water and they were permitted by DEP, that's really that's DEP's nickel. As long as they keep within their.
Margie, I unmuted you. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, no, I wanted to speak. Is that all right?
Please do.
Okay. Elliot, this is called, I guess, the wastewater management review. Does wastewater manage, is that just stuff that's coming out of that's water that runs off the site, correct? And the fact that this impervious coverage has been increased way beyond anything else in the town, and you're going to have thousands of trucks every day on this dripping oil and other contaminants, and there's also these little rubber right? The rubber from the tires is it's a 4-letter acronym. I can't remember. I do have that somewhere, but
Passfully, is that what that was?
it's an emerging. It's a PFAS.
I know what you're talking-
PFAS.
Yes.
Right.
PFAS.
That is an emerging. That that really
Forever
impacts
chemicals.
water.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that has to do with stormwater controls. Well, I haven't seen a stormwater plan, and before Christie, WQMP regulations required consistency with the stormwater regulations. They don't any longer. Now, that was weakened by Christie. Now, the stormwater review is done it's between the town engineer and the stormwater engineer for the developer. It still can be a public process. You have to insert yourself to make sure you get to see it. And the stormwater, which must deal with these contaminants that come off of whatever visits the property, whatever on the property that can get into the aquifer via stormwater. They have to deal with that. And I strongly suggest that SRD gets involved in reviewing that stormwater plan, perhaps even hiring a stormwater engineer. There's some very good ones in the state.
Great. Also, next question. I learned from a gentleman from FEMA that we should bring up and we should pound home that this is a sole source aquifer in that, and I guess as I understand it, it's defined as an aquifer that delivers more than 50% of a town's water. And I mean, there's only a few of these aquifers across the nation. And, Sparta and northern New Jersey has quite a few of them. And, if my big push is that in the event that there's a fire here in this warehouse, the technology today is to push in the walls and pour water on the fire for several weeks and put it out. And if that were to happen, you would certainly have incredible, millions of gallons of water going into that limestone with carcinogens and contaminants, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if the DEP is going to listen to the fire risk story, or they're going to tell me to sit down like our town lawyer did. But anyways, I don't know, does that
Well,
hold
you
any?
know, I mean, you know, that's a concern, but you have to, it's not a regulation. And I'm not going to argue it's not your right to be concerned about that as a possibility, but your best opportunity to either condition to delay this, the more delay the better, or conditionally approve it or deny it, is how it doesn't meet the regulatory requirements. And, you know, even if it's an evil bastard, I'm not saying Diamond Chip is, just an evil bastard, can meet the regulatory requirements. That's who you get as your neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay, as a follow-up to that.
Mhm.
So you said that we should all stand up and say, we need a
Geotechnical investigation. Phase one,
Geotechnical,
and based on that, it will determine whether a phase two is required, which is a more which is a greater level of intervention and study.
okay.
Yes.
And does the sole source story or byline hold any water, no pun
So to
intended?
speak.
Yeah,
I mean, sole source aquifers are large. They're not small, and they're not that rare.
okay. All right.
But they can easily be contaminated. So,
And that
I
would be
mean,
devastating to a town like
of course
this.
it will be. It will, you know, it could be as devastating as one of our major reservoirs can no longer be used.
Will we have the ability to discuss this on the 21st?
Well, the 21st hearing is a non-adversarial hearing. There's going to be anyone who speaks is free to speak what they want to say. It's all recorded. There's a transcript made, and there will be a response down the road, a written response, but there's no discussion
Okay.
unless it's
So-
one person discussing one thing. There's no back and forth.
Okay. So we could bring this topic up, the sole
Of course
source.
you
We could
can.
also bring the runoff, and
Of
we could
course
also
you can.
bring the fire protection issue.
Yep.
I've got a fire professional that's willing to come in and testify. And I spent today putting together a package for him, and I think that he'll be very good.
That'd be great. And I hope that they'll also submit written comments, because they carry written comment, oral testimony backed up by written comments carries the most weight.
So can you just reiterate that for this group? Because I know folks are taking off time from work and everything on the 21st to be able to participate and make statements. But you are saying that it is just as important to back up what is said by submitting
Yes.
the written comment.
Yes, and anyone who can't speak because they're shy in public or they can't make it that
Like
day
me?
or whatever should definitely submit written comments. And anyone who speaks should really just summarize their points and be more specific when they submit written comments.
And the directions to do that, Elliot, is probably in the NJDEP hearing information,
Yes.
but I want to make sure I can get that out to everybody. That's a big follow-up item.
Yeah,
Where would I find it?
Yeah, that's on the preliminary notices section of the WQMP page. But I can easily send you that, Barbara, to distribute. It
Okay,
tells you.
so it's Mark, you have a lot of really good points and you've done a lot of research. I don't want that to have less weight if it's not also submitted in written comments. So thank you for, having us make that point. Did you have more, Mark, or
Nope, that
there's
was
a
it.
couple folks, that was it?
That was it.
Oh, light
Oh,
night.
I have one question, sir. How do we win?
How
How
do we
do we
win?
win?
Yeah.
What do we
You
have to
win.
do to get this, to stop this?
You win by never giving up, by delaying it as long as you can, by commenting at making every opportunity to comment and commenting. I've seen it happen. There may come a time, and who knows, the developer may be listening to this. There may come a time where they realize they're spending, they're throwing money at a bad project and just cut their losses and leave. I mean, it would be ideal if there was a conservation organization waiting in the wings to purchase this at an appraised value, but I don't know who's going to want to buy a gravel pit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would hope that, you know, the current owner may have been responsible for a reclamation plan, and this gets him off the hook for that.
A reclamation plan?
Yes, most crushed stone gravel mining operations, there is an agreement that at the end of the useful life of this quarry, they're going to do something to it to make it usable, whether it's fields or housing. It's not just going to be an ugly, unsightly, forever
Yeah.
pit. So
I'd rather look at that than a warehouse or mega
Yes.
warehouse.
Where would we find that?
that should be on file with the municipality.
Okay.
Reclamation.
Thanks, Margie. So Kathy Ebbinghausen is asking where we can see considerations and reports that the DEP makes after this hearing.
Everyone who's commented DEP will reach a decision on whether, and what they can do is deny, approve, or approve conditions. With that will come a comment response document. And that will be published in the New Jersey Register. They will alert anyone who has commented and left an email address. They will send an email out to alert those, and we'll make it available as well.
Okay, Harriet, you have a question here in the chat and your hand up. Would you like to speak?
I just wondered if there is an example of a warehouse that's been built on an aquifer like this, and what they did, if, you know, what happened with it, if there was any issues with it, problems that you know of.
There probably have. The other warehouse that we were intimately involved in, there was a very strong citizens group, which was the Jandal warehouse in White Township. We defeated. It took 4 years. People were convinced that it was going to be built when it was proposed, but they were as active and as engaged. They raised money as SRD. And I mean, this was also on limestone, right up against the Delaware River in the worst location. Oh, let me point out something else briefly about good planning. If you are a conforming municipality, this is contrary to the new Highlands Council warehouse siting guidelines. And you can still make a call that we want the best planning for our community, whether we're conformed or not. And the Highlands Council has issued these guidelines, and we think they're great. It fails on 2 measures. You can't build a warehouse in the protection zone. It has to be in the existing community zone. And you can't build a warehouse more than 3 miles away from an interstate interchange.
Well, we are. We're 12
Yes,
miles away.
That's a
Yeah.
very good point to make.
Yep.
When
It's
is that
one
maybe
other-
not directly related to the Water Quality Management Plan amendment, but it's a good point to make.
Yep. Unfortunately,
Did you-
all our stuff really isn't relevant to the water quality management plan, but they are real concerns. I just wanted to add in there that there is an example of a community that bought a warehouse over an aquifer out of state, but it's very close in Milford, Pennsylvania. So we can Google that and look that up, but they did win that as well, because they talked about, we wouldn't float it out there if it was a lake, but because the water's underground, why would we build over it? And that seemed to help. Pennsylvania.
How can we make this 3 mile argument? What was that? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Elliot, that's the new
Well-
warehouse siting rules, right? That's why they're,
Yeah, if you go to the Highlands Council's website, on the front page, they have a link to their, I think it's been adopted. I don't think it's proposed
But they're
anymore.
grandfathered
I
in.
think it's been adopted. Yeah,
exactly.
but it is good planning advice.
Mhm.
And those guidelines you can read from the Highlands Council website. They have the package.
But with this new
And
application,
That's the reason why we want Sparta to conform the planning area to the regional master plan, because then we get the benefits of all these rules for planning. It doesn't necessarily help in this application, but it is something that we can advocate for and have impact on for the future. Harriet, you still have your hand up. Did you have a follow-up or?
No, that was it.
Thank you. Is there any other question? What about the fact, okay. What about the fact that this is really a trucking rail transfer terminal rather than a true warehouse? I keep thinking of pollution runoff and petroleum products. So that's the stormwater management rules again, which is a
Yes,
real concern. It's just
Yep.
not the water quality master plan, right?
correct. So, you will have other opportunities to object, and I'd aggressively take advantage of every one of them.
Yep. So we are getting very close to 7. I know we started late. You guys really hung in there with us, and we really appreciate that. There's just no better group of grassroots volunteers that are passionate about protecting their community. I appreciate so much too, Elliot, you spending your time and Ian, and also running around Booten to try to find internet access to communicate with us. And I think it's been very helpful. I think if there's any follow-up questions or information, if you guys want to email me, I'm happy to get your concerns or questions to the Highlands Coalition and see if we can do any follow-ups. But so I just want to give
Raise
the
my hand.
5-minute warning and see if there's any other folks that would like to participate, have a question. Mark, Margie?
yes. You said that the other night when we were in the meeting, and because they have come back with a new application, are they
Revised.
grandfathered? Pardon me?
Revised application. It's technically a revision.
It's not new, it's revised. So therefore we can't use the new Highland rules with the 3 miles, and because they'll be grandfathered in.
Well, you haven't conformed, so they're not, the Highlands guidelines are not regulations. You have to conform, and then they'd have to withdraw an application and resubmit it, which has happened because of circumstances.
Yeah. So that's
But-
the thing to note, is that we're a Highlands municipality. We have a planning area that is not in conformance with the regional Highlands master plan because we're allowed to choose. Sparta is allowed to say, we don't want to conform. And in Sparta's defense, we're mostly in the preservation area and we conform to that. So this is an area where we can plan. But if we want to plan as good, sustainable planners, then we would want to conform to the Highlands master plan, regional master plan. So then we have the benefit of all these rules, because our group views that as a benefit, right? It's the whole responsible development balance of, you know, thriving economy, protection of people, protection of environmental resources. So that's where we are. There's a lot of things, a lot of ways that we can have impact, and advocating for Sparta Township to conform to the Highlands Council's regional master plan, being that we're in such a sensitive part of the state, is definitely one of them.
All good points, Barbara.
It's things I never thought I'd know. Well, is that everything, guys? We're just almost at 7 o'clock, and I really want to be respectful of your time. I'm sure there's a lot of bellies that are growling, including mine.
Raise your hand again.
Thank you
Well,
very much, Elliot. Thank
It's
you.
my pleasure anytime, and this is what we love to help grassroots organizations become effective, because we can't be in the 88 municipalities of the Highlands all the time. And I think this is always a very good, mutually beneficial partnership.
Absolutely.
So-
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody. Good luck.